Welcome to Bite Size Games, a podcast where we take on games that are 10 hours or less because we'd rather keep it short than be caught dead behind the mic. I'm your host, Dennis, but I'm not alone. Who do I have with me here? Let's start with the blonde-haired man.
My name is Matt. It's great to be here, as always. It's always a pleasure.
And who else?
And this is Phil, drinking the drink of choice, Suntory Highball.
Nice. The drink of choice for champions?
The drink of champions.
Drinks.
the drink of... yeah, you'll get there one day. You'll get there one day.
The drink of sad, depressed, middle-aged men everywhere.
Yeah.
So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Killer Frequency, which is a kind of puzzle adventure game, first-person adventure game from Team 17. But before we get into that, recently the list of nominees for the Game Awards came out recently, and just wanted to go over that a little bit and see if there was any standouts or anything that we'd want to talk about or disagree with, agree with. We all know that the Game Awards is kind of bullshit anyway, but
Yeah, I remember we had a big discussion on it last year.
yeah, we had that talk before,
about how
and I
bunch of
I
ads.
still think that's the case, and I'm sure we're gonna watch them this year.
Complete
or at least
industry
recap.
circle jerk, man.
It is, but
Right.
it's still all we got. So
Yeah. We need the
fun to talk
Sundance
about.
of video game awards.
I'm totally okay to just shit on it for a few minutes if that's what we want to do. But it's still nice to see a game that you liked appear in there, though, and get recognition.
Yeah.
And it's
for
nice to get angry about games that you feel don't deserve it.
I didn't have
So,
anything
yeah.
that super stood out. I mean, I think one of the biggest points of controversy is the fact that they're nominating DLC, especially like as a game of the year. They're nominating the Shadow of the Erdtree Elden Ring DLC as a game itself. Which
Yeah.
in some cases is fair enough, but
It's
when you-
it's funny
when-
because wasn't it last year that Phantom Liberty for Cyberpunk 2077, which is a DLC, was nominated as like ongoing game category?
ongoing game, interesting. I didn't.
Which
I
is-
guess they
Is there a
changed it.
category for that? Ongoing game?
There is, and usually that's reserved for like
Like World of Warcraft or something?
live service
Right.
games.
Yeah, like that.
Live service games.
Destiny, Helldivers.
Yeah, which is what the kind of stuff that's mostly there this year. But I mean, that was kind of a weird nomination last year, but I think they were kind of just trying to honor them in some way because of all the crap that went down with Cyberpunk from launch and how much they recovered since then. So it's like maybe they just wanted to stick them in somewhere. But
Why don't they just make a DLC category? Like, it seems...
Right, best DLC.
I just
Would
I just
make
don't agree
sense.
with it. I just don't agree with a DLC being in Game of the Year.
Yeah, no, I generally would agree. I also think this was a weak year for Game of the Year games, to be honest. I mean, if you look at the nominees, it's kind of obvious. Last year there was a lot of games, like strong contenders. I think this year there weren't really that many major Game of the Year type games coming out.
So, well, quick interjection.
Well-
Could it not have been like, say, like, you have indie games. Could an indie game not have been Game of the Year?
Well, they have
Balatro is
on
there.
Yeah.
So
what's
could it
on
not
that-
also
that's what I
be
was gonna
like Game of the Year
say,
contender
like-
too?
Well, Matt, you said Game of the Year type games, but what to you is a Game of the Year type game?
I mean, stereotypically, they're like big AAA releases, right? That have
Yeah.
are like sequels and things like this that have a lot of excitement behind them. There just weren't that many type of games for that this year. I'm not saying that's what should be the game.
Because
of
I
the year.
feel like if what you're just saying
Stereotype.
is like reinforcing the issue with the gaming industry right now. Like if you were to nominate games like Balatro for Game of the Year, then I'd be like, okay, well maybe companies be like, okay, we don't need to like, you know what I'm saying, have these massive blockbuster games that are the only things that contend for Game of the Year.
Right, but I mean, well, obviously, like being nominated for Game of the Year or winning Game of the Year is a big PR boost and will help companies sell more games. That's true, but I don't know. I think they always do tend to include like at least one indie game in the Game of the Year list. You know, Inside was there in one year. I think Celeste was also there before in past years.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common to include an indie game in there.
It's never like dominated by indie games. I mean, even Astro Bot is kind of a
somewhat, yeah,
not indie, but like
it's a smaller game.
Balatro is there. Okay, Balatro,
right.
Astro Bot, Wukong.
I wonder about Black Myth Wukong being included just to bring in a Chinese developer.
I don't even want to get started, man. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to get blacklisted.
I seriously doubt that. That game was like super highly praised when it came out, and it's supposed to be. It's supposed
wasn't
to be really good.
Really that. I mean, I feel like it was a consistent like 8 out of 10, but I wouldn't say 8 out of 10.
I think it was bigger because it was like a unique, like, okay, we've been doing ninjas forever. Finally, we got like a good level like Chinese.
I think it got exactly. It got hype because it was a big, high-end AAA game from China.
Right.
Not saying it's a bad game, but I think I don't think it has a chance at winning at all. But I think it's just kind of included there just to kind of appease. And obviously, Game Awards is, there to make money. And if they can get Chinese viewers eyes on this award ceremony, then that helps the Game Awards as a.
I don't know. I haven't played. The thing is, like, I haven't played most of these games, so I can't really say. But I feel like it's a worthy contender based on what I had seen. It seemed like a worthy contender.
I'm glad it's there. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I think it has more place to be there than Elden Ring, even though I love.
Yeah, right. I feel the same.
FromSoft games. But I think you're the only. Have you guys played Shadow of the Erdtree? I know, Matt, you did.
I've only started it. I'm not very far into it, so I really don't know how much of it's. I mean, I know it's a completely different map and all different area, but.
Phil,
I thought no, because I don't even want to like it. It's just like in the back of my mind subconsciously, it makes me sad. Cyberpunk and Elden Ring are just still waiting for like the heaven's door to open for me to get there and play them.
The one game I do think should be on the Game of the Year list is Animal Well. I think that should be on there, to be honest.
That actually surprised me too. I thought that would be there.
Well, how did it sell? Like, that's probably something I would be interested to look at. Like, what are the game sales? Like, was it just not big enough?
No, it sold really well. It was like one of the top selling games on Steam for a while.
Yeah.
Dude needs to rub the right palms, man.
I bet of the games listed here, I would think Astro Bot is probably the one that sold the least because it's tied. Well, I guess Final Fantasy is also tied to PlayStation, but I feel like Astro Bot has a much smaller audience.
Yeah, I want to play Astro Bot. It's supposed to be really good. It's supposed to be a lot of fun. So I'd like to play it.
Yeah, I would if I had a PS5. I definitely would.
Yeah, Balatro on there. Balatro, I'm not a huge fan of the game just because I didn't have a lot of fun with it. But I know a lot of people love it, so I understand why it's on there for sure.
I've put a buttload of time into that game.
Metaphor Refantazio?
I like Metaphor Refantazio.
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that.
And that game's been blowing up. Like, I think it's a good contender to win.
No, the graphics. No, I'm sorry.
The graphics.
Like, I just feel like, okay, let me just say this. Like, we're talking Game of the Year. I feel like you have to push an envelope, and that game doesn't push an envelope, in my opinion. The graphics look like they're. Okay, well, what do you think is pushing?
I disagree 100%.
Okay, hold on a second.
I think the art direction in that game is gorgeous.
That is exactly what I was going to say. Okay, that's the one thing I'll say, like, it has, like, a unique, like, look, art direction. But besides that?
Besides that, that's a huge deal. That to me is more important than pushing, like, graphical boundaries with, like, higher HD resolutions and more realistic textures. Like,
well, the combat is also recycled. I feel like the combat is basically recycled from the other games. And yes, you have an extreme art direction, but then it's kind of like everything else is kind of...
It's a turn-based RPG. I don't think you have to necessarily reinvent the wheel for that. I think it's nice to have that game there because it's a really beautiful, like, well-written game. I haven't finished it. I've only started it, but I don't know. I have a soft spot for Atlas also. I think for Japanese developers, they tend to stand out with their games.
They betrayed me, man. Let me just say, I like Atlas. I love Atlas. Again, this is me coming from like an old school player, and I just feel like lately more and more they're becoming a little bit slowly, or more quickly than slowly, sold out. So that's all I'm gonna say.
I don't know what you mean they sold out.
I'm gonna say that in the sense that like they're okay. I'm gonna say they sell out in the sense that okay, Metaphor is a new IP, and you got the Persona games, and they just became more and more accessible, which I guess is good. Honestly, I want to say that's like a bad thing that the games become more accessible, but they got more simple and a bit more dumbed down in their like systems. And as someone who was like more into it for their extreme, you want it to be difficult or you want it to have complex systems, everything just got more simplified, and they really like leaned into the social aspect of the games a lot more than. That wasn't part of what all the original games, and now they're like really leaning into this like
the social aspect has been there since Persona 3.
Since Persona 3, yeah, and that's exactly the point where I kind of was like, I don't really like the direction it's going, and they just lean more into it now. It's like, okay, this social thing is popular, and then every game has to have this social like.
So you want them to stay the same forever. You don't want them to.
No, I didn't say that. Don't twist my words, man. Listen to my words, okay? My words.
I don't see how having the social aspect is selling out.
Because the social, what does the social thing bring to these games? I just feel like it's a distraction, and I don't like playing either Persona or Metaphor.
I think.
Wait, I just want to finish the thought, because when you play these games, they have a pattern of like, I don't like playing two different games. I feel like you have an hour of like you're in a dungeon, 2 hours of a dungeon, and then you do like an hour and a half of like the social stuff, and then you do 2 hours of a dungeon, and you go back and forth, and I don't like that. Like, I would rather I hate when you have to like basically play two different games, kind of, and that's what they start to feel like now. That's my opinion. Nobody agrees with me. That's fine. I'm just a little guy in the basement right now. But that's my thought.
I think first of all, I think that's you're underselling how important that is, especially for Japanese players. I think that's a big part of a lot of Japanese games is having those.
Why is the social aspect so important?
I don't know why it's important for your average Japanese person, but I think that's a big part of a lot of Japanese developed games. Not FromSoft, obviously, but like they like, games where you can romance your waifu, like that kind of thing.
I mean, I don't
develop relationships.
Yeah, but you're not into that, Phil, I guess.
I've never got the game relationship
I can totally understand if that's not your thing, because it's a, that's not an easy thing to sell if it's not something you're into. I don't think it is kind of mashing two things together, right? I kind of like how what was it, Marvel Midnight Suns?
Midnight Suns, yeah, Midnight Suns. Yes.
That was one of the most controversial things about that game, was like, get this like persona out of my XCOM.
Yeah.
Get this dating sim out of my XCOM game,
I actually really kind of like that game, and I agree with it's kind of the same thing, but it was like fun though. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's mashing two different things, but I don't know. I guess it's a weird combination when you try to mix two different things in a game, or more than two different things into a game.
Right.
So.
Well, aside from those Game of the Year contenders, was there anything else in the list? Any games that you guys have seen or played or read about? Silent Hill 2, I was sad that didn't get included in Game of the Year, but it's, if you've already got remakes in there.
It was it's included in other parts, right? Best narrative.
You got narrative. Yeah, that's nice. That's a fun one. We've got direction.
Direction's the exact same as the
except for Neva, which is I've played that studio's earlier game, Gris.
Grease.
which is basically art first, gameplay second, the original, and I think this looks similar in that aspect. The independent games, though, that's where we've got Animal Well, which we covered. Animal Well also ended up in debut indie game. I don't quite understand. I guess debut indie game is from a developer that hasn't made anything before.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Manor Lords.
Yeah,
The only
I don't have
game I haven't played on the indie games is Neva.
I haven't played nearly any of them.
Baldur's Gate 3 is on there. How's Baldur's Gate 3 on there?
Community support.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean,
I guess that just means they've been constantly updating it and releasing patches, and yeah.
Yeah, they got some weird categories. Like way
Games
too
of-
many.
yeah,
For
like-
this, the first thing is like there's just way too many categories, and that's when last year. Remember that was one of the things they just announced the winners of these categories like
in like a montage or something.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
In less than a montage. They just read off the name. That was it. The winner is this. Okay, and on to a commercial.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, let's let Kojima talk for an hour.
Yeah.
Paying the bills.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't have high hopes, or I don't actually care too much about Game of the Year awards. The Game Awards.
We should have made our predictions. I think Black Myth Wukong is definitely gonna win. Like, I could see it winning Game of the Year. Like,
gosh, I have no idea. I just hope it's not Final Fantasy VII remake.
It's not gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be that metaphor. I think it's gonna be Wukong. I 100% gonna say it's gonna be Wukong.
I think if it is Wukong, then somebody's changing hands. Money is changing hands somewhere.
For sure.
It's rigged.
Like, what would you choose, or what do you think would be better? I haven't played any of these games except for Rebirth, so I haven't played Balatro.
The only ones I've played are Balatro and Metaphor. So
I haven't played Astrobot, so it's not really.
Just based on what I've heard and read, like, I kind of want Astrobot to win.
Yeah, actually, I could see that. I could see that being the case too. Astrobot seems like it's a really cool game.
I'm also gonna say Astrobot. It kind of feels like the Mario 64, like old school
for PlayStation
vibe.
I think it would be funny if Balatro won, just because
that would be weird.
It's an indie game, and it's also now a mobile game. It just got released on mobile.
Yeah.
Vampire Survivors.
I wouldn't be mad about it if that happened. I'd also think it would be cool if Metaphor won, just because it's a Japanese developer.
Mm-hmm.
Elden Ring, I don't want to win because they've already won.
Yeah, they don't. I don't think
Game of the Year.
I don't think they're gonna win. I don't want to see Rebirth win. It's gonna be Wukong.
Why don't you want Rebirth to win?
I don't want to. You know how I feel about Squaresoft these days. So.
Well, I just don't think it's. I don't think it's that. It's a good. The main overall not great, but if you just focus like the best narrative or best writing, like best combat, something like that, then maybe Rebirth, but not for Game of the Year.
Yeah,
there's too much bullshit in that game.
I don't want to set a precedent of like remakes or any of that to be Game of the Year, because I feel like it just needs to be something that's like original or new or pushing something. So I don't really want to be like, okay, here's another like Grand Theft Auto 5 Game of the remake.
Yeah. There's that aspect as well. I think Balatro and Astrobot have that covered probably the other one, the Atlas game you were talking about.
Metaphor, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably better too for that.
All right. Well, my big takeaway is more people should go play Animal Well.
Animals, I do think that should have been nominated for Game of the Year, but
yeah, if that was on the list for Game of the Year, that would be my choice.
Right.
Not just because I played it, but
it is kind of surprising that Balatro is there and that Animal Well isn't. That is just a bit strange.
I think that's just a popularity contest thing.
Yeah.
Right. Which all these awards are anyway. So.
Yep, that's why the Game Awards are bullshit. But as I said, we don't have anything else.
I feel like there should be something else. I feel like there's enough money in the gaming industry now that there should be like something a bit more purist or something like that. existing.
Well, I mean
a lot
individual like publications
Right.
do their lists, and
publications do their own lists, so there's always that.
So if you find
But
one that
big
you
award
trust,
shows are fucking hard to do, so and very expensive.
yeah. So take it with a very large grain of salt.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Why don't we get into our main topic, which is killer frequency. So killer frequency is a game developed by Team 17. They also published the game. This is a first-person horror adventure game, kind of inspired by 80s slasher movies. It seems to be what they're targeting. There's a lot of references to that kind of thing. But it's very unique in that you play as a radio DJ, and the entire game takes place within the radio, not just the studio, but the building that the studio is located in. But let's get into first impressions, and we'll start with Matt, or overall impressions. How long did it take you to finish, and what did you think?
Took me about 5.5 hours for this. At least that's what Steam said. And overall impression, wasn't a big fan of the game. I think for a type of game, I like the premise, the general idea behind the game, but for that premise to work, it needs really strong writing and really strong story and really good puzzles, and I don't think it had any of that. I thought most of the writing was pretty bad. I didn't think it was very strong. It's supposed to be funny. I didn't find it very funny. I was never like laughing. I thought, Thank Goodness You're Here was much funnier, but that's a personal thing. Different people find different things funny, but that's my experience with this. I didn't think it was very funny. And the puzzles were confusing at points, frustrating at other points. Some of them were really easy. I don't know. I don't know. They didn't gel with me very much. I like some of the exploration and things like that. I have an idea of what this game should have been in my mind, like while I was playing it or after I finished it. I have this whole idea of what this game should have been instead of what it was. But I can get into that later. So yeah, not my favorite game. I was kind of negative on it, I would say, overall.
All right. How about you, Phil?
Interesting. I almost have the exact same thoughts. I feel like I should say you said everything I want to say. I don't know if I have anything. You said everything I felt. Well,
really,
I had the exact same thought. If you're gonna do a game that's so kind of stripped down to just a couple elements, then I feel like those elements need to be better. And then maybe it's a budget thing. I just feel like maybe it's a budget thing. But so those elements need to be better, like voice acting or the music or something like that. You just basically have two things that you need to focus on, because you don't really do much else in the game. So I feel like those things, what you get in this game, it's not even that good. And the tone is I initially really hated it, to be honest. Not really hated it. I was like, what? The tone was just felt off because I didn't know it was supposed to be comedy.
I agree about the tone. I
didn't get it was supposed to be comedy maybe, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a comedy, and it just threw me off because I thought it was supposed to be a much more serious premise. And then I kind of midway or earlier through, I was like, okay, I kind of lightened up about it. I guess that is just going to be more of a Scream situation, but still, I was kind of I still feel like those elements need to be better, the voice acting or the puzzles or the music, and because that's essentially the entire game in a nutshell. So while I don't really hate it, I mean, I kind of enjoyed it in a way, but I just felt it could have been a much better game. I feel like it could be a much better game. That's kind of how I felt at the end of it. So.
All right. How long did it take you said?
According to Steam, it's 27 hours, but
there's no way.
I just left it on, I think, a bunch of times. So
you always do that.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's probably 6 or something like that. I think it did take me a bit longer than I expected, though.
All right. So I think I'm somewhat aligned with both of you, actually. I really wanted to like this game, and I think the premise is super unique and sounds like could be a really interesting concept. Well, it is an interesting concept. I'll give it that, but it's not executed very well. And so it is a throwback to like 80s slasher stuff or 70s 80s slasher stuff, but it doesn't have the teeth or like thrilling, edginess of that. It feels like a PG experience, and that bugged the hell out of me. Like, it's not scary, and you play as a DJ that doesn't have the capability of DJing properly. All three of us are people who've DJ'd or still continue to DJ, so maybe it's a little bit more annoying for us, but the fact that that aspect of the game is so simplified bothered me. Yeah, and you mentioned on paper, everything here sounds like it's going to be cool, and I was excited to play this, but it's just clumsy. It has mostly the puzzles are too simple. I would say they need to be a little bit more cryptic to be interesting, or there's a couple of cool ideas there, but there was one or two times where I know, Matt, you said it got confusing, and I actually my playtime was about, I think I have 6.5 hours on Steam, but I actually did reload saves to redo some of the puzzles because I was like thrown off by something that wasn't clear. I was like, wait a second, why did I fail that? Like,
right.
And I didn't understand why I failed the puzzle. And then when I figured out what the correct thing to do was, it didn't feel satisfying. The tone, I wish they took the humor out of it. I wish it was just more scary because, like you said, Matt, the humor is not good, and it's just kind of feels goofy. Like,
it has to be like one or the other better. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
it kind of feels like I'm watching a Goosebumps episode or something. like some kind of like made for TV horror
for
kids show. Like, it's just not. It just feels silly.
It does.
The main guy and his assistant their voice acting is okay, but like every person you call who calls into the studio sounds like some over the top bozo that like.
I don't know if it's like they just had like literally it might be the same actors that do every voice or something like that. That's kind of like the situation.
They sound very generic. Like
this person said, oh, you know what I mean? Oh dear.
Here's I just imagine the direction they gave to them was like, okay, you're gonna play the stuffy businessman.
Right. Yeah. Everything was a character.
You gotta play the college frat bro. All right.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. To an extreme.
But yeah. So sorry, I'm going on too long, but it's frustrating because I really wanted to enjoy this game, and it had a cool premise, but it overall, like, I was disappointed.
Well, it's interesting.
I was going to say it was developed a little bit more and had a little bit more, maybe more budget put into it or something.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's interesting because I think we just now said that we kind of have an overall negative point of view about it, but this game not have really good reviews. Also,
it does have really good reviews.
Another one of those cases where we've played a game where we all kind of don't really love it, but it has really good reviews.
I really do feel like a lot of indie games get special treatment, and I don't think this is really necessarily an indie game though, because Team 17, they're pretty big and they've been around since like the early 90s, but
they're still like they're more like a AA developer, I would say. Team 17.
I mean, they're mostly known for the Worms franchise,
right?
Which they did, and they do like all those games, but they do a few others like this one.
Oh, they got the budget. They got the budget for this. I'm sure
they did Dredge, which was in the Game Awards last year, by the way.
Yeah,
Dredge was awesome.
Yeah, they have other good, like they have a good track record, I'd say, for the most part. I haven't played all their games, but I was surprised about. I was also disappointed by this game. I feel the same.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's one of those games that I really wanted to succeed, though, and it just upset me. But it wasn't like pissed off at it like I was like Children of the Sun or anything.
Right. That's kind of true. Like it was like a negative point of view for me, but like I wasn't like I didn't like actively hate it, or like despise it, kind of thing. Like it was still like it's like watching a bad, semi-entertaining movie in a way. But yeah,
there were
I think
points.
the reason
There were definitely points that I didn't like it. I was just like, I don't like this. Like I just want to get through this. There were points. Where
I think the
like
reason
that.
games like this do get fairly high ratings is because they don't have many other games they can be compared to. Like this is such a like I couldn't think of another game that plays this way. There are some elements that are in other games, like adventure games or puzzle games, but the entire setup is very unique. But that'll and then there's probably also people out there who are just fiending for 80s movie references and slasher vibes, so vibes alone might carry them through it. But
are the vibes really that?
Well, let's get into
let's get into it. We got to get more in depth, I think, now at this point.
All right, so let's start off talking about the gameplay mechanics and loop. Matt, can you lead us on that?
Yes. So you are a radio. You play. It's a first-person perspective game. There's no shooting. There's no combat. Nothing like that. It's just first-person perspective. You are a radio DJ host of a show, and you've been turned into the 911 call center for silly reasons, and you have to take all these 911 calls. There's a killer about in town, and so basically between playing music with like a very limited set of records, like 5 or 6 records or something like that, what you can choose between. So you can like choose records to put on. There's a producer who will talk to you and like tell you to put on a song now, or we have to take a call, so turn the music off. That's about the extent of it, though. You're not required to like play certain tracks, although except for one at one point. You just freely choose the music you want to play. It's just press play and stop. That's it. But basically, you can you pick things up, put them down wherever you want, and then that's basically the extent of what you can do in the space you're in. But the main gameplay loop is you take these calls from people and are like basically getting hunted by this somewhat of a serial killer, and you don't know their identity, and they have like a situation like, oh, I'm in this office building, I'm hiding in this room, the killer, I can see him on the security tapes, there's phones in the other rooms, can you call like like a different room to get him to go to a different room and then tell me where to go to get me out of here, type of thing. So it's these type of puzzles that you do through conversations on the phone, and basically he like, for that one, for example, he faxes you a map of the office building, and you have to go pick up the fax. Like you have to go out of the studio room that you're in, you go into the office room and you pick up the fax from there. So there's other rooms that you can also explore within the actual radio station that you're in, and you do that multiple times throughout then to just kind of help with these puzzles. And then, you kind of just make choices based on the information you have, based on what the person tells you over the phone and the information of the clues that you can kind of find within the radio station. Sometimes it's a map. Sometimes it's like, it's actually very often it's a map of something. And you have to find out how to get someone somewhere. But then there's a few other things like phone numbers and things like that, and people's like backgrounds and whatnot. And the main thing is you choose dialogue options to get them to safety, or if you fail, they end up getting killed, and that's essentially the gist of it. I mean it's generally quite simple in terms of the gameplay. This is why it's mostly about dialogue options, the dialogue choices that you make, the finding of things in the office, like you're required to do it. It doesn't let you advance until you do find the things that you need to find, so you're never going to really like miss something crucial. There are like Easter eggs that you can find, but they don't affect the story at all, and the gameplay. So it just basically it's not, I wouldn't say on rails. You're free to explore as you wish, but it does like block you from returning back to a certain room until you found everything you need to find. Which
might be good for this game, honestly.
Right.
So,
No, it is, because it would be very, very easy to miss things. So I'm not
I
complaining
kind of appreciate that they do lock off certain areas.
I don't think it's a bad thing. And there's a bunch of doors that you have to like get keys to unlock and stuff like that. But basically the main choices that you make are just what to tell to people through the phone, so that they will either survive or get killed. And of course, you're trying to save everyone. But and so that's basically what the gameplay is.
The only thing I would add in is that there's a really shitty implemented DJ mechanic like that.
I was just gonna say that.
Simplified it is.
The DJ thing is.
I mean, it's just putting a record onto a record player and pressing.
It's
play.
literally but and like just like doink with the buttons. like it's like push stop and push play. There's dead air constantly in this.
Yeah, right. And it's frustrating. Like at least like I don't know like how I kept thinking how would I have made the DJ thing better, like because it's frustrating as someone as a DJ, like you have to play for a certain amount of time because she's like you put a song on and then she's always like, oh, there's a caller, like you don't listen to any of the songs really, like for the most part. It's like you put the song on.
I didn't really listen to any of the songs. You don't have to.
Then it almost feels like why is it in
play
the songs?
Okay, so you know what? Maybe I'll just jump into this right now.
Wait. Or they could have. No. Okay.
You want to hear what I'm saying is, and this is maybe I don't know if I should say this now at the end, but I'm saying this game, the premise is fine, but it should not have been you as a DJ. You should have been in the 911 call center taking 911 calls, and there shouldn't have been anyone else there. Maybe one other person like the producer.
That would have been a much less sexy premise, though.
But what do you mean it's less sexy? I feel like that
you're their 911 operator,
and keep the tone scary, and just keep it and get rid of all this silly, goofy stuff. I feel like that just would have been a much better focused game. I feel like I don't
disagree with you.
Everything that had to do with you being a DJ was almost the worst parts of the game, like the comedy, the playing of music, like all the pointless stuff, like all the funny stuff. I feel like if they
I think that's there because I think it comes down to someone being like, remember the 80s? Let's put some 80s music in our game. And like, how can we include 80s songs?
This was like a weird...
it's done so poorly that it's just... And it's so pointless that it's just not... It doesn't enhance the experience at all.
Imagine if this was split into the adventure game aspect, but also like... I don't know, maybe they have some sort of a ranking system or like a scoring system for how well you transition a song or
well, now that you say it, like a 911 operator game would have been cool maybe, and like maybe that's like the focus of the game, like they just focus just on that and you like have to handle calls like
well you can still explore the police station to find clues and shit like that, like you don't have to take that away, but just make it make sense. Like, why do you have to be this? Like, I didn't see the reason.
Yeah, the DJing didn't end up making any sense because it's like I said, you put a song on and immediately she's like, all right, turn that song off because it's a call in. It's like, what? It's like you know what I mean? You don't have to do any of it. Or and like
you
maybe
also only have a selection of like 10 songs to last the night.
Yeah, they could have also like maybe implemented the puzzles in the song somehow. Like, you need to listen to a certain track.
Exactly. It felt so separated. It felt like it didn't need to be. It wasn't part of the game, being the DJ. So
the premise I still think is good, but I feel like you just have to like build on it or just make if you can't have the budget to build on it.
I wonder if they were planning to implement more intricate DJ mechanics and expand that out, and then just didn't have the time or the budget to continue with it.
Entirely possible. Yeah, entirely possible. But at that point, they couldn't turn back.
It's like it would be cool if we could get the licensing for like Wham and like Tears for Fears and you know what I mean. And
it would have been more fun if it had like real music. Like all. I don't feel like the music that you had was very strong or interesting. It was just it felt super generic, not worth listening to really.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the gameplay.
That's the gameplay, yeah.
And it's okay. It's not the main part of the game.
Let me ask a question. Is there a run button in this game, or I just could not find it?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I struggled thinking there must be a run button, and I just have not discovered it for some reason, and it frustrated me a lot. So,
all right. So why don't we get into the level design?
Sure.
I'll start us off on that. Now, level design, I mean, it does just take place in this one building. Some areas are gated off, but you start out in an alleyway, making your way into the studio. But most of the game takes place inside the radio studio. But sometimes you have to leave to go and find pamphlets or newspapers or VHS tapes or other records, that kind of thing. But for the most part, you're in behind the DJ booth, and that's where you're talking to callers. That's where most of the gameplay is taking place. But it is kind of divided up into, I would say, if there were like stages, it's like each caller is a different level or a different puzzle.
Yeah.
And they do try to break it up a little bit. So, like, for example, you mentioned you have to direct somebody around an office using the map that they fax you. There's also one where somebody's trapped inside of a corn maze, and the killer is chasing them through the corn maze, and you have to direct them through the corn maze. There's one where you have to like get someone to clip some wires on like a piece of machinery.
Start a car,
and you have to get
the keys.
That's right. They have to hotwire a car, and you have to like give them the instructions on how to hotwire a car. This is pre-internet 80s time, so fortunately you just happen to have all the information you need in your radio studio.
Just happened to.
So it's mostly that the puzzles are broken up that way, and each stage kind of reveals a little bit more about the town, the people who live there, and and you get to see the killer moving between the different areas of the town and interacting with the different townspeople. There's not much more to it besides that.
Should we could talk about the puzzles a bit, maybe? Like, I don't know if like we had some, because that's one of my complaints, I think.
Well, ultimately, like the ones I mentioned, like, what were you going to say, Phil?
I was just saying, puzzles, is that kind of gameplay or just like?
I think for level design, we can puzzle design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Think of it that way. I just think that they were very basic, and didn't really. I don't know. They didn't seem challenging. The most challenging aspect of some of them was just that it would have been unclear, not in like
and just like obscure, just like not direct. Yeah, it's just obscure kind of, or like it wasn't clear like what needed to be done or something.
There was one that I was genuinely did not understand what I was supposed to do necessarily, and that was the one where you had like a list of potential next targets and like a bunch of newspaper clippings about them suddenly. And like, I thought it was really cool. Like, I thought that the idea of it was really cool. You have to read these newspaper clippings, find out who they're about, put them in like order, and see how these stories are like connected. But I had no idea. Maybe I missed something, but I could not figure out how I was supposed to figure out who the next target was based on these newspaper clippings.
I felt the same exact way. Yeah.
I had no idea how to figure that one out.
I was like, I must be missing a piece of information because nothing makes sense. I'm reading this shit. It makes no sense still. And they're like, the hint they give you didn't make sense either. Like, look at the time, like the dates or something like that. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I put them in the order, but it still didn't give me any impression of who the killer wanted to kill next. It didn't, because it all took place, like most of the shit took place like in the past.
Yeah.
I think I managed to do that one correctly.
You did?
It's been a while since I played this now, but the first one I screwed up was the Office one.
I screwed that one up too.
The Office.
Oh, I got the Office one, baby.
It's because you're supposed to wait. I think I spoke too quickly or something into the radio.
Like wait in the closet or something.
I don't think I fully understood. Like, is that place farther away than this place? Like the distances.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't. It's just like the maps. I actually messed up the one when I think you had to like tell them to take turns, like go like there's like a map you look at and you got to tell them like which way to like take a turn here and go here, go here.
The maze one.
Yeah, but it wasn't clear like what's like an end of a street or like what's, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just the map was not clear where you're coming out of and what's in the intersection.
I think that's the kind of the overarching issue with a lot of, not all of them, but many of the puzzles were just, it was kind of unclear, and I was annoyed. There's this, okay, so the very first basically thing that it asked you to do is like choose a weapon for this person, and I chose to choose the mace, and they're like, and they're like, oh, it's not getting through his mask. I told you had his mask, but it's like, what fucking mace isn't going to get through like, what mask doesn't have eye holes? Like, what kind of mace wouldn't work on a mask unless it's like a mask where you can't see out of it, like a Daft Punk mask.
You can't breathe out of either. Yeah,
right. I was like, what the fuck? How does it?
I think I chose the taser for that one, and that was the correct.
Yeah, I should have done that, but I mean, I chose mace because anyway, I was pissed off because like, oh, and then the person died. The person died because I chose mace. It's like, that's fucked. That's bullshit.
So I mean, so in a way, do we not feel like, and this could be like a more final thoughts, but like this game could have had potential?
Yeah, I think it did have potential. I know
it had a lot of potential. Like if they, it did.
Yeah, I think it's a good starting point for a really cool game, and I admire them swinging for the fences and trying out something new. That's why I wanted to like this, because I always am happy to see something different and try something different. So I'll give them credit for that, but I just don't think it was developed well enough.
Yeah, execution was poor. I think
there's so many good puzzle games out these
right.
days that have really interesting puzzles, and there's a lot to compete with, and it just kind of feels like limp.
Yeah, the puzzles were really, really uninteresting, unfortunately.
And that's the majority of the gameplay,
Yeah, exactly. The game is it relies so heavily on like good writing, good story, and good puzzles. Like, it kind of reminded me of a really shitty version of Tacoma or something like that, which didn't really have any puzzles.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking the same. I thought about Tacoma too, because I was like, oh, like, I like Tacoma. Like, Tacoma was, I just kept thinking that. Well. It's kind of it had characters, even though it was pretty short, but you kind of felt somehow invested in it. I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
they
the
did
writing
a good job
was really
about
good.
that. Yeah. So
there are some points in the game where I was thinking, this is like where you start exploring like the basement and different areas of the building, and it starts to get a creepy vibe. But like, I was really hoping that it would do something else with that. Instead, it really is, okay, you're in a creepy space, but all you're actually doing is just looking for papers or documents.
Yeah, right. Nothing ever happened. They could have set it up, because the music was kind of creepy and stuff like that. Yeah. And you were hiding in like these kind of narrow corridors and stuff like that. They could have easily had something pop out.
Weird too, because like, it felt like that also was unfinished, because I felt like there's a lot of rooms that I thought I was eventually going to be going to. Like, when you go to the staircase, there was two options, down or up. You can go to the roof, but you can never actually go up there. Like, there was a big green light on it. Like, it was completely lit up, making you think that you're going to go there eventually.
Yeah, that is the DLC, man.
That's the DLC. So the roof DLC.
Yeah,
I heard that's going to be nominated for the Game Awards.
Yeah. So potential, but just flopped, complete flop.
So that's the level. We're still on level design, but I mean, we've kind of expanded on to just the game again overall. But
we can move on to the.
Were there any other puzzles that, like, anything that stood out to you or frustrated you? Good or bad?
There was one that I thought, it wasn't really part of the puzzle, but it's just a funny thing that I wrote down was that in one section, there's like, you have to talk to these frat boys to like get them to go to this other house or something like that. And so like, they didn't believe that you were the DJ on the radio. They're like, you have to play this song to make us prove to us that you're the DJ. I was like, we're talking live on the air, on the phone. Like, how do they not? If they're listening to the radio,
didn't they call up? Like, it's not like you called them.
No. You did call them. We did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you did. Okay, right.
But either way, like, oh no. They called you because you had to get them the number from the beer
pizza
pizza delivery.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. They did call you, but they didn't think you were the pizza place. But either way, you were on the radio, like talking to them live on the radio. So if they were listening to the radio station, they should be hearing that this phone call happening on the radio. But they're like, no, you have to play a song to like prove it. And anyway, it was silly. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, that was the only other thing that I really wrote down.
I mean, I didn't like the puzzles. I have mixed feelings because I feel like some of them were like okay, but yeah, maybe they were like way too simple. Some of them were way too simple, and then some were way too like it's not obscure, but like you just
obtuse.
Obtuse or something. Yeah, just like it just kind of didn't make sense in a logical way. Even if you try to approach it really logically, it didn't really make sense. So, all the elements of the game just need to be polished in some way. That's kind of how I felt about the game, and
everything needed to be better.
Everything just needs to be better.
What'd you think of the game? Everything needs to be better.
Yeah, basically.
Something, or at least one point needs to be much better. Like 1 point of the game needs to be much better.
It was. I mean, okay. Why don't we can talk about the vibe? I think that's next, right?
All right. Yeah. Let's get into the vibes next. Phil, why don't you start us up on the
story,
vibe?
Right? It was on story. The story. So
story is
vibe and story.
Well,
together.
yeah, the vibe we kind of talked about. It's kind of like an '80s throwback to the '80s, early '80s vibe. You got a lot of synthesizer, purples and neon and thunderbolts and monster trucks, and you're working at a radio station. You're like seem to be like a kind of like star DJ from like another town, and for some reason you kind of had to come in. I actually forgot the reason, but you come into this like small town.
They don't say, but you were like fired, and you were basically
it sounds like
blacklisted.
it's a demotion or something.
Right.
But you used to be like the shit. Apparently, it's a DJ, and you're in this new town. They hire you in this small, like really country bumpkin town somewhere, and so you're a big shot, and you're doing your show, and there seems to be this kind of like these incidents of like. The night starts. It's one night, basically. It's like a one night in the evening of your first day of the job. I don't think it's your first day of the job, but it's like a one night situation. People call up, and they're getting murdered. They're getting attacked by this person who's called the Whistling Man, who whistles and lets them know that you're present. They do this kind of like whistling sound.
You're skipping one major point. Is like, why are people calling the radio when they're getting murdered?
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So So I think early on they let you know that like for some reason 911 at a police station is just kind of like is completely down, like the line's like down or something like that.
They had one.
There's only like
they had one 911 responder, and she had to go.
And then two police officers, but they were missing or something. The sheriff was missing, and his deputy.
Sheriff was killed. Is killed at the very beginning, and then the 911 one person has to go save the rest or something. It's just like I've rerouted all the 911 calls to the radio.
It's
station.
you. It's only you, not the hospital, not anyone else. It's you.
So ridiculous. Anyway.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So all the emergency calls come to you, and so this killer's like out on the night on the hunt, hunting people. And all the emergency calls come to you, and it's your job to kind of save or guide these people through their hope for survival because they're lost. They're in a situation, and you can either guide them or help them or somehow give them information that might save them. And you might fail at giving them that information, and they might end up being killed by the killer, which, by the way, I don't think there's any real consequences to. So
yeah, you're right. Actually,
that was a little disappointing.
You still get the same ending no matter what. Oh well, I think maybe there's some slight differences in ending, but nothing major.
They show you who died at the end,
right?
In some Polaroids.
Yeah. There's definitely some achievements. There's achievements for getting.
I feel like that was meant to be like a replay,
right?
Like to entice people to replay.
Mm.
Yeah, and so like the overall like story, I guess there's like the killer is kind of like if you could think of like, oh, this is Scream. I just think of it as like this is Scream 3 already or something. Like apparently there was a whistling man that had been killing people like 20 years ago or 10 years ago or something like that.
Right. It's like I know what you did last summer.
Yeah, and now this person's back, or they're wearing the same mask, and so they're doing the same.
Scream 1 kind of had that also because there was Sydney, the main character's mother, was murdered by some guy. Cotton Weary, but there was like some controversy about whether or not he was the actual killer. So there was like a history in the town already of a murder spree happening.
Okay. I kind of forgot.
So yeah, I'm definitely a lot. Even if it is a '80s throwback, it's definitely inspired by '90s Scream.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like gives you Scream vibes, and I'll say that also in that the overall tone or vibe too, because it does start off like I was expecting it to be more serious than it was, but it kind of quickly becomes clear that it's kind of comedic, and I think that's just like a weird juxtaposition for me. Like it was like, oh, I expected the seriousness, but it was like more of a joke. And it's hard to take it very seriously.
That's I think, comedy and horror definitely have a place together, and a lot of slasher movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Scream franchise, they all do have comedic elements, and they're used strategically to kind of break up the tension. Mm-hmm. But here, there's not any tension to begin with.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't. You can have it, but it just wasn't done. I think
it felt like
enough or something.
I don't know. Like it kind of like fucked up like there was no tension, and it was kind of because of the comedy. Like it was more funny than it was serious. Like there was no serious to it, even though they were trying to be serious.
It felt like the comedy part,
like overshadowed
that side of it. Yeah, exactly. That was priority,
right? Which kind of messed up any sense of there being real danger or people like actually dying and stuff.
Well, also because you must have failed a couple of the calls, I think. But like when you failed a call, like I was kind of like, I think I did the first like few like fine, and then I failed one, and it was just like, oh, the dead, like, all right,
bum, bum.
That's sad. Next caller.
You know what? I don't know if you guys had this, but like
it was like
because of how weird the tone was. There was a point where I thought that this game might end with all of the people from the town, even the ones that supposedly died, coming out and being like, "Welcome to the town. It's just a joke. Like we do this to every new person who moves here." Like it was like,
that
and then they all like
see that
because it felt like that would have fit with the tone of the game.
That would have made more sense.
Like he was just getting punked because he's the new guy.
And
so you think this game leaned too much into comedy? Actually, you think?
Just too lighthearted, I guess.
With no payoff, and like the comedy wasn't even very good.
I don't think it also helped. Like I said, the voice acting. I think I have a feeling I might look it up. It might be like total like 3 voice actors. I feel like they just changed their voices and did like, hey, you know what I mean? Like do the caricature, and I can get it from a budget.
The Pani's Pizza guy.
Yeah, the Pani's Pizza guy. Yeah. So you need to kind of sell it more, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like if you're gonna do it, and this game has to be believed on the voice acting, it needed to be better, in my opinion.
It was like it was sillier than Scooby-Doo or something like that. It was, I don't know. It felt like they were trying to go Scooby-Doo-ish, but it was even worse. Just didn't
Scooby-Doo.
It didn't gel. I mean, Scooby-Doo is comedy, mystery, horror. It's not really horror, but it's like there's someone on the.
It might be cool if it was like a whodunit kind of situation. Like if somehow you have to kind of guess. Yeah, but
but not. You don't really have to find out who the murderer is. Well, I mean, you kind of do in the end, but
there were actually Scooby-Doo references in the game.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure I picked up on them. Like what?
Like there was some like street names like named after the characters in Scooby-Doo, like Jones and Dinkley. Dinkley, Fred Jones.
Catch that.
Is Fred Jones a Scooby-Doo character? I thought it was just like we got like
Fred's last name is Jones.
Who's Fred? We got Scooby. Who are the characters, by the way?
We got main guy, right?
Fred, Wilma, Daphne, and Scooby, or Shaggy.
Shaggy, yeah. I can think of Shaggy, Wilma, and Scooby. So Fred is the main.
Fred is the preppy dude.
Yeah, he's the most boring guy, I guess, in the Scooby team.
He's Freddie Prinze Jr. in the movie.
Did not see that live action.
And there was there were some references to like Halloween and like John Carpenter, like with the street names. I think all of the street names and like apartment complex names had like references.
Maybe that was lost on me.
There was a Haddonfield Road, which is the town that Halloween takes place in. There was like Myers Lane, like Michael.
Oh,
Myers.
right, yeah.
So there was little Easter eggs, I
Easter
guess.
eggs, yeah.
Okay.
Not enough to save the game, though. All right, let's wrap things up with our closing comments. Is this a bite-sized game, and what are your final thoughts on it? Starting with Phil.
It is a bite-sized game. It's less than 10 hours, and it's also like not difficult to get through because you're like not exactly on rails, but like a little bit on rails. And but I just felt like I just wanted more from this. I don't know why. I just wanted more in one direction or the other from the main two elements, either from the music, DJ side of the game, or the horror side of the game. And the tone was a bit off for me. I'm not sure I really recommend it, and I hate to bring up price again, but we've established that is a thing. So if you can get this on sale and you're curious, go for it. But I think at the normal price, I'm not really sure I'd recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, it's a bite-sized game just because it's short and easy to get through. But I don't think it's a good game. I wouldn't recommend it. I think, of course, it had potential, but it's not like there in this execution. So I don't think it's worth playing, sadly. But maybe, if I feel like if they'd done differently, if the main thing is that they just need to do a better job, which sounds like a shitty thing to say, but it's just how it is on this game. I just did not find this game very good.
The southern voices are almost laughable. That's kind of like I almost laughed every time somebody was trying to do this. Like every woman was doing this semi-southern belle, like panic. You know what I'm saying? Like damsel in distress, almost voice.
Like high school theater class. Or
something. Yeah. The voice acting for the callers was just really silly, really just insane.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I feel bad coming away negative on this again because, like I said, it does try to do something different to some extent, but when I think about like recommending the game, I think about who is this game for, and I wouldn't say this game is for horror fans, for horror game fans, because it's not scary and it doesn't have any real tension. It's definitely not for music DJ people because those mechanics are really lackluster. I guess it might be more appreciated by adventure game fans, if anything. Adventure game fans who are really nostalgic for 80s and a few 80s horror references maybe, but I don't know. Who am I to say, because this game has overwhelmingly positive reviews. So it's the children who are wrong.
But does this appeal to children at the same time? I don't know, man. It's a mystery. I wish I could have insights into like who the demographics of people who buy these games. And it's bite-sized, in the length, and it's breezy. You won't get stuck, and you can't get stuck even if you fail one of the puzzles. You just keep going. So, I don't know. Even the story itself is not enough to engage. All right, it's a shame.
We're all a bunch of negative Nancy's.
This is not the way we wanted it to be, though. Wanted to come out
with disliking the game. We don't have to like every game we play. So,
all right. Well, that's going to take care of this episode. And next episode, we're not going to cover a game per se, but we're going to just do kind of a roundup for the year and talk about the games that we played, talk about the highlights and the low points. And we'll just kind of wrap everything up in that way for the end of the year. If you'd like to reach out to us or follow us on social media, you can find us at bitesizedgames_ for most of the social media channels. We're also on YouTube now, releasing video versions of our shows so you can see our beautiful faces. Beautiful aging wrinkled faces. And that's at Bite-Sized Games TV on YouTube. And you can also email us at bitesizedgames.info@gmail.com. So thanks for listening, everyone. And no matter how brief, every gaming moment is a chance for greatness.